Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this very special session of our Berry Forum tonight. We have the amazing grace of introducing you, being introduced to a really exceptional artist, an artist in the spirit, and one might say, in the friendship of Father Thomas Berry, who was her mentor in many ways, and who, in some sense, bestowed upon her a capacity to enable us to see with eyes of the ecozoic. As we'll see, she so very powerfully has such vision. Angela Mono is an award-winning artist, a graduate of Bard College, who studied art at San Francisco Art Institute, at Parsons School of Design, and at l'École des Arts in Lacoste in France. She also trained with master iconographer Vladislav Andreyev in the ancient liturgical art of Byzantine Russian iconography. She is a multiple grant and awards winner. She has had her work featured in numerous solo and group exhibitions all over the United States and in the Middle East, in Southeast Asia. Her work is also in the privileged status of being housed in the Smithsonian Institution. Angela's been commissioned by the Ecology Task Force of the Vatican Dicastery on Integral Human Development to co-create an audiovisual program that opened Laudato Si Week in 2022. And in this very, very special anniversary of Pope Francis's administration of the global Catholic community, 10 years now, she, in a very special way, has advanced and aided our acceptance and understanding of his encyclical Laudato Si. And now in the glorious series of contemporary icons of endangered species, she will open up to us the vision that she has been blessed with for our sakes and for the sake of all of the earth. So, Angela, may I give a very, very special welcome to you and say that this has been a long time program in coming, but it's really here. We have survived, thank God, a pandemic to bring you to be with us. And we're happy that you're here.
Thank you. It's so wonderful to be here. And yes, it was a long time coming, and I'm thrilled to see so many wonderful faces, some that I know and some that I don't know. My objective of this talk today is twofold: to give you a preview of the work that will be on exhibition beginning March 20th at Iona University, and to pay tribute to ecological theologian Thomas Berry, who was my informal mentor for over 20 years, and whose teachings have helped shape my worldview profoundly. So I'm going to show a selection of what will be on exhibit at the Chapman Gallery, as I said, March 20th through April 5th, interspersed with quotes from Thomas Berry and others who have inspired me. Before we go to the images in the exhibition, I wanted to give you a little background about how this series of contemporary icons came about. I began learning and practicing traditional Byzantine Russian iconography over 20 years ago. The images I was working with were beautiful and healing, but after some time I began to feel constrained by the subject matter, where nature was relegated to the backdrop of the human divine drama. I knew I needed to expand the canon of images to include the whole of the natural world in order to be true to what I know and feel about the sacredness of all life. The piece is entitled The Earthly Paradise, Icon of the Third Millennium. So to fulfill my desire to honor the totality of life, in 1995, I conceived of an icon of the whole earth as it is seen from space. I chose this image, first of all, because as Thomas Berry reminds us, we are derivative of the earth. Plus, I had always been fascinated by that image that was beamed back to the earth during the Apollo missions. I also wanted to add a spiritual dimension to this image because the earth is more than matter. It is also mind and spirit. By adding the gold halo encircling the earth, I'm depicting the earth as a bio-spiritual entity when all of humanity is in harmony with the planet and as we reach our highest fulfillment. When I had much of this new icon conceptualized, I paid a visit to Thomas Berry, who was living at his Riverdale Center at the time in Westchester, to get his thoughts, particularly about the symbolism of the new cosmology that is embedded in the piece. After a long consultation, he gave me his blessing. So now we go to this quote from Thomas: "The primary task of the human is a recognition of the beauty in which we find ourselves." I'm going to minimize this. Hold on. I name this exhibition Saving Beauty because for me, beauty is the highest virtue. In my book, The Art of Evolution, where a whole chapter is devoted to beauty as a standard of measurement, I write, beauty encompasses the principles of balance, proportion, scale, synergy, relationship, integrity, harmony, wholeness, and radiance. These characteristics are found in the highest principles of both art and ecology. Thomas explains, what's plagued us is the interpretation that the beauty we experience is something we invent. It's not really out there. Unquote. This erroneous notion that beauty has no objective reality is expressed in the saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. There is much more to say about beauty as a value. I will be talking more about this at the opening reception at my gallery talk on the 21st. So this is a quote from Thomas Aquinas that sums up the understanding that gave rise to my series of icons of threatened and endangered species, and why I create images in a traditionally religious form. Because the divine could not image itself forth in any one being, it created the great diversity of things, so that what was lacking in one would be supplied by the others, and the whole universe together would participate in and manifest the divine more than any single being. Now we will look at some of the artwork that's in the exhibition. This piece is entitled The Honeybee. Ape is the honeybee. It's the first icon I created in this series of threatened and endangered species. This industrious, iconic insect gives humans so much in the way of their honey, their pollen, and irreplaceable work as pollinators. They are severely threatened due to the use of toxic pesticides, destruction of habitat, and lack of forage due to monocultures. The most worrisome threat is the agricultural use of toxic chemicals, which have been found to shortcut bees' memory and navigation. To make matters worse, the EPA has approved the use of the bee-killing pesticide sulfoxaflor, which is banned in the European Union, by the way. Without bees and other pollinators, coffee, apples, almonds, tomatoes, and cocoa, to name a few of the crops, would be wiped out. Although the so-called services nature provides us in terms of food, water, oxygen, and cooling the planet are critical, what gets left out of the conversation about species extinction is that these beings have intrinsic value. This is the loggerhead sea turtle. Sea turtles are an ancient species, having been around since the time of the dinosaurs, about 110 million years. All 7 species of turtles, sea turtles, are endangered. The loggerhead is listed as critically endangered, which means a high risk of extinction in the wild. The major threats to their existence are plastics, which they ingest, mistaking them for food, oil spills. They often mistake the pools of renegade oil for the sargassum seaweed they need for their survival. Many areas where drilling occurs are critical sea turtle habitats. Other serious threats are the accidental catching of turtles in commercial fishing gear and oil on beaches that pollute hatchling and nesting areas. This is the chambered nautilus. It is a marvel of nature's design. It's been around for about 500 million years, even before the dinosaurs. And now it is endangered. The main threats are overharvesting, habitat loss, and climate change. Populations in some areas, such as the Philippines, are declining due to overfishing. One serious climate change-related issue is ocean acidification, which affects the nautilus's ability to build its calcium carbonate-based shell. This is the giant kelp. It grows in forests along 1/4 of the world's coastlines and cushions them against the effect of storm surges and sea level rise. It provides a nursery and refuge for many marine animals, cleanses the waters by absorbing excess nutrients, helps alleviate ocean acidification caused by too much atmospheric carbon being absorbed by the seas, and reduces carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, a main driver of global warming. It is threatened by increasing warming ocean temperatures due to climate change, coastal development, pollution, fishing, and invasive predators. This is the Sumatran orangutan. People of the forest, the meaning of orangutan in the Malay language, are listed as critically endangered. In the wild, extinction is likely in the next 10 years. The recent history is heartbreaking. This is the story of losing their only home to bulldozing and burning to make ready for palm plantations and other agricultural plantations. Poaching, hunting, and illegal logging inside protected areas remains a major threat to their survival. Oh, brace yourself for this. It's not easy. I just want to take a moment. This is the pangolin. They are dispersed throughout southern, central, and East Africa, as well as in India, the Philippines, and China. It is the most trafficked animal on the face of the earth, poached and slaughtered for their scales for the same reason rhinos are being hunted to extinction, magical powers associated to a body part. Their scales, ironically, are used for protection in the wild, but attract lethal human predators from whom they have no protection. And these scales are the same as our fingernails. It just contains keratin. There's really no reason to be doing what they're doing to decimate this species. This is the horseshoe crab. It is also an ancient animal, more than 500 million years old. And yet their numbers today are in steep decline due to human activity. The biomedical industry bleeds horseshoe crabs to manufacture a detector for biological bacterial contamination, despite the fact that a synthesized version is now available. A large percentage of them die after bleeding or cease to be able to reproduce. Other threats are overharvesting for bait, fishing bycatch, habitat loss, and water pollution. Now, this is just a sample of what's going on, unbeknownst to most of us. The glory of the human has become the desolation of the earth. The desolation of the earth is increasingly becoming the destiny of the human. This is the iwi, or scarlet honeycreeper, one of the most recognizable birds of Hawaii. Although it was once widespread across the islands, this iconic bird is now in danger of immediate or near-term extinction across the whole western portion of its habitat. The spread of avian malaria and avian pox has limited its range to high elevation areas where it's too cool for mosquitoes to deliver the diseases. And as climate change pushes cooler temperatures farther and farther upslope, the bird will have fewer and fewer high mountain refuges. To wantonly destroy a living species is to silence forever a divine voice. This is the Florida manatee. Over half of the more than 1,000 manatee deaths in Florida in 2021 were attributable to starvation. 800 more died in 2022. The mass die-off is being caused by pollution-fueled algae blooms that have killed thousands of acres of seagrass in the Indian River Lagoon. The EPA was recently sued for failing to protect manatees and sea turtles from water pollution in Florida. To make matters much worse, there are plans to dredge the San Juan Bay. The project will deepen and widen shipping channels to allow massive liquefied natural gas and long-range oil tankers to import foreign fossil fuels. The San Juan Bay dredging, which will occur 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 14 months, will remove 2.2 million cubic yards of seafloor and dump it into the ocean. The project will harm acres of seagrass that feed manatees and sea turtles, and this habitat loss will not be mitigated. It will also further entrench Puerto Rican energy systems' reliance on fossil fuels. A lawsuit pending in federal district court challenges the Army Corps' dredging project. If all the beasts were gone, man would die of a great loneliness of spirit. This is the emperor penguin. It is one of the 19 species of penguins, all of which are endangered. Because of the receding of sea ice due to climate change, they are losing needed space to breed and raise chicks and to avoid predators. Their key food source, krill, is also declining because of melting ice, ocean acidification, and industrial fishing. This passage from Dream of the Earth by Thomas Berry expresses his vision of the ecological or ecozoic age most succinctly. A luxuriant Earth community, mutually enhancing in all of its layers and levels of life and being, where the minds of the universe are safeguarded and nurtured, where the creativity of each nation of every species is energized for the total vibrancy and joy of the whole community of beings. I like to pair my images sometimes with inspirational quotes, and this is from Hilary of Poitiers, Saint Hilary of Poitiers. The sky and the air are beautiful. The earth and the sea are beautiful. By divine grace, the universe was called by the Greeks cosmos, meaning ornament. Surely the author of all created beauty must himself be the beauty of all beauties. We all have our particular work. Some of us are teachers, some of us are healers, some of us are farming. We have a variety of occupations, but besides the particular work that we do and the particular lives we lead, we have a great work that everyone is involved in and no one is exempt from. The great work before us is the task of moving modern industrial civilization from its devastating influence on the earth to a more benign mode of presence. It is not a role we have chosen. We were chosen by some power beyond ourselves for this historic task. We are, as it were, thrown into existence with a challenge and a role that is beyond any personal choice. The nobility of our lives, however, depend upon the manner in which we come to understand and fulfill our assigned role. So, how do we go about saving beauty? How do we create the ecological age envisioned by Thomas Berry? Listed here are three approaches to change: the legislative, the confrontational, and creative, set forth by Thomas Berry, and the fourth approach, consciousness changing, which is an additional approach named by Buddhist scholar and deep ecologist Joanna Macy. As we're nearing the end, I wanted to leave you with a glimpse of signs of the emerging ecological age with some examples of these approaches to change. Of course, they are only an infinitesimal representation of all the positive changes and efforts going on in the world today. So we begin with the legislative approach. Examples are the recent legally binding United Nations Global Ocean Treaty, which is a great cause for celebration. You may have heard of it in the news recently. Another we are all familiar with is the Endangered Species Act, which has saved 99% of protected species from extinction. Then there is the emerging ecocide law, which is defined as mass damage or destruction to ecosystems committed with knowledge of the risks. The Stop Ecocide movement is striving to amend the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court to include the crime of ecocide alongside genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Other examples of legislation are the ban on the capture and confinement of dolphins and orcas in 2013 by the Indian government, because cetaceans should be seen as non-human persons with their own specific rights. The government of Hungary, Costa Rica, and Chile, among others, have issued similar restrictions. In April of 2022, the Parliament of the United Kingdom approved a bill that considers animals as sentient beings, and organizations like the Center for Biological Diversity, whose more than 40 attorneys are in court 24/7, are working to protect the lands, waters, and climate that species need to survive. And so now we go to the confrontational, which is a tactic that's used when all attempts to change laws fail. As an example of nonviolent direct action, Julia Butterfly Hill lived in an old growth tree for 2 years to protect it from being chopped down. Her riveting story is told in her book, The Legacy of Luna. Highly recommended reading. Another example is University of Utah student Tim DeChristopher, who registered as a buyer in the 2008 oil and gas lease auction of 22,500 acres of public lands around the Arches and Canyonlands National Parks. Without having the money or intention of buying or developing them, he outbid all oil companies on the parcels and saved those irreplaceable lands from oil and gas exploration. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison despite having raised the money to cover the leases. He describes the value of this kind of action by saying, it exposes the moral flaws of those in power because it forces them to make a choice to either change their ways or put good principled people in jail. It begins to undermine the moral legitimacy of those in power. And then there are the more aggressive confrontational tactics, such as the armed anti-poaching rangers in Africa, who patrol areas with sniffer dogs to prevent poaching of vulnerable and critically endangered species like rhinos and elephants, who are hovering on the brink of extinction. And finally, the creative approach, which is broadly defined as devising new ways of living and organizing that don't aspire to change or oppose existing systems, but that create alternative systems side by side those in existence. The most comprehensive approach in this category is permaculture, a holistic design system for creating sustainable, environmentally sound food production systems and integral human communities by fostering harmonious interrelationships of humans, plants, animals, and the earth. There are many examples of permaculture being implemented around the world. And finally, the most ambitious conservation initiative ever devised is the Half Earth Project, conceived by the late biologist E.O. Wilson. Its goal is to preserve 50% of the Earth's land and sea in order to safeguard and expand and manage sufficient habitat to reverse the species extinction crisis and ensure the long-term health of our planet. They are doing this by mapping out the most biologically rich areas on the planet, identifying where to establish wildlife corridors to make these areas contiguous, and working with local governments to make this happen. The fourth category, consciousness changing, was, as I mentioned before, put forth by Joanna Macy. The ultimate need is to change the way we think about our relationship to the planet. Once human consciousness has shifted to a biocentric norm of reference, as opposed to the anthropocentric one we have now, where humans understand themselves as a species among other species and recognize the rights of other animals and ecosystems, legislation protecting ecosystems will flow easily, and the confrontational approach will one day no longer be needed. This is a long game. A change in consciousness can be fostered particularly well by the arts and ritual because they evoke strong emotions. Much of the information we have about the state of the world is in numbers and percentages and don't reach the heart. Alongside the arts and changing consciousness is education. There is so much going on in this area now, but for these purposes, I'll just give you a few examples. In terms of ceremony, a council of all beings is a communal ritual in which participants step aside from their human identity and speak on behalf of another life form. It's deeply transformative. It has been enacted in groups around the world since it was created in 1985 by Joanna Macy and ecologist John Seed. Another ritual is the cosmic walk, a large spiral design created by Sister Miriam McGillis, in which participants trace their history at stations representing the multiple transformation of the universe, from its beginnings to the formation of galaxies and planets and the earth and life and humanity, to their own birth as an individual. So it's one seamless story. In literature, there is the great work by Thomas Berry, Act of Hope by Joanna Macy, Laudato Si, On Care of Our Common Home, the groundbreaking encyclical by Pope Francis, to name a small fraction of what's out there. I am sure you have many other titles that have impacted you deeply. In film, there is the classic An Inconvenient Truth that galvanized the world in a very short period of time when it was released in 2006 to the coming climate crisis. And Don't Look Up, a recent film, an allegorical tale starring Leonardo DiCaprio that really hit a nerve among the general population about the urgency to take climate change seriously. And Journey of the Universe, written by evolutionary cosmologist Brian Thomas Swim and historian of world religions Mary Evelyn Tucker, which orients the human person within a creative, evolving universe as it traces its sequence of transformations from the birth of the cosmos 14 billion years ago to the emergence of the cell, to the emergence of human consciousness, and the choices we have as extensions of that evolving creative universe between our current deleterious impact or as a benign presence on the planet. And then there is music. Misa Gaia, or the Earth Mass, a composition by Paul Winter integrating world music with songs from the wild to celebrate the whole earth as a sacred space that is performed annually on the first Sunday in October at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York City. Another musical masterpiece is composer Sam Guarnacha's Emergent Universe Oratorio, which can be described as a lyrical celebration of the cosmos in its various transformations from the Big Bang to the emergence of Earth's global consciousness, which has evoked a profound spiritual response in many listeners. And lastly, in education, in my book, The Art of Evolution, I propose a new kind of ecological spiritual formation, similar to other spiritual formation programs, that leads to a change in the meaning system that a person holds as a basis for self-definition, the interpretation of one's life, and overarching purposes and ultimate concerns. This new spiritual formation would be designed to bring about peak experiences, leading to a complete change of heart and way of life. In Pope Francis's words, an ecological conversion. Courses along these lines are the Yale University Journey of the Universe, A Journey for Our Times curriculum, which draws from the film that I mentioned earlier, and the Deep Time Network, an online community whose mission is to orient humanity with an evolving, interconnected universe. And although it no longer exists, I must pay tribute to the 3-month Earth Literacy Certificate program at Genesis Farm, which was instrumental in transforming my sense of orientation within the universe. And last but not least is visual art, which is the form of expression I am working in to try and change people's hearts and minds. Speaking of visual arts, this is the complete collection to date of my icons of threatened and endangered species, except for a couple that haven't been professionally photographed yet. My goal is to have 35 by November 2023, 5 icons from every genus, that is bird, fish, mammals, reptiles, amphibians, insects, and other invertebrates. Though it will not be the end of the series, I intend to continue with this series. So many of these are going to be on exhibit at the exhibition Saving Beauty. And I hope some of you will be coming. And there you have it.
Well, thank you so much, Angela, for that that river of inspiration that you've shared with us. I think of Barry's insight that we need to relate to the community of creation as a communion of subjects rather than as a collection of objects. And I think you've really shown us a way in which we can honor our place in relation to this wide web of subjects. I think you've also shown us the deep sacred nature of this community of creation, as well as the ways in which this community has been so gravely defiled and desecrated So I'm just incredibly grateful for that really beautiful presentation. And honestly, I cannot wait to see these pieces in person at Iona, and I cannot wait to accompany my students to view these images, these icons of sacred beauty. So thank you again so much. At this point, we can open up our circle for a conversation. So I would say if anybody has a question, a comment, a reflection, a connection that you've made with anything that Angela has shared with us, you can just go ahead and raise your hand and we can unmute you and we can get a vibrant dialogue going here. Yes.
Thanks for your comments, Jim.
Thank you, Angela, so much. Teresa. Oh, Teresa, can you unmute?
Thank you, Angela, for your presentation and for showing us your absolutely beautiful icons. They themselves are very moving in the way you have presented them. Thank you. I wanted to ask you, do you know the work of Julia Galloway?
No.
She's a ceramic artist at University of Montana, and she has done a series of urns in clay that are representations of probably about 60 or 70 endangered species. They're urns about this size. Mm-hmm. And they have the images of the endangered species on them. Julia Galloway.
I'll write that down.
University of Montana.
So the urns are to symbolize their ashes. Is that?
I think so.
Okay.
Or their potential future.
Right. It's wonderful.
Thank you again for your presentation and your beautiful work.
Thank you.
That is spoken by one artist to another. Thank you, Lisa.
And for people who want to see her work, Jim just posted her a URL for her gallery.
What time is your talk, Angela, at the gallery?
I think it's 12. Is that right, Kathleen?
Okay.
Yes, we'll put the, I did send out the schedule, but we'll put it in the chat. We'll put the link in the chat again.
Thank you.
I'll do that now.
Hi, my name is Vitala. Hi, Angela.
Hi.
I just wanted to say that I was particularly moved by the species that had eyes and the way they were looking at me, at the viewer. The orangutans' eyes in particular were so powerful. It's like, do you see what you're doing? It was just and many of the manatee's eyes, I just really was very moved. I just wanted to say, I'm very moved by the eyes. The eyes they're looking at us. Thank you.
Well, you know, just to make a comment about that, in traditional iconography, the eyes are very important too, you know? So I do carry over a lot from my training and from the form, the traditional form. Yeah.
Yeah, very powerful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Margaret?
Hi, Margaret McCaslin. I would like to thank Angela for long before Cyclone Freddy started its now 5-week journey across the Southwest Indian Ocean. Angela chose that part when she shows the globe. It's not Eurocentric, it's not America-centric. She, for whatever reason, chose that view of this spiritual biosphere. But to me, it was just so moving to be looking at those clouds over the ocean at a time that this unprecedented cyclone has been repeatedly battering that part of the world. The other thing I want to commend people to doing is the slideshow was wonderful, and the mixture of the quotes and the resources and the framing of it. It's been very enriching and inspiring. But I really enjoyed following Angela on Facebook and watching the progression of each of the icons. And I'm sure many of you are here because you follow her on Facebook, but if there's anybody that isn't, even if you're not generally a Facebook person, it's worth just following Angela, if nobody else, because the many layers and the many reasons that result in these phenomenal images, which I too am just hoping sometime I can see in person. I'm so grateful to you, Angela, for the work and the context that you surround your work with.
Thank you, Margaret. It's the first time I'm seeing you in person, I think.
Oh, really?
We've been corresponding for years. Nice to meet you.
Same here.
Teresa?
Yes, I would love to express my gratitude. This was absolutely beautiful and touching. I would love your artwork in my home. So how do I purchase icons?
Well, you can go to my website, and we'll give you, there's a like contact area, and just be in touch and look at the artwork and let me know what interests you. I do have a page that's not published that I will send to you with the images that are available, because some of them are already owned.
It's 8 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Herman. Can you unmute?
Yes, I'm trying. So Angela, I've seen pictures of your icons before, but the way they were presented tonight, and I have to be on my phone tonight because I can't get to a TV, but they were just sort of very touching. And as you know, I work on Earth law and I work with the rights of nature, and I think that it came to me in a wholly different way, seeing the icons. I grew up in Florida, and I'm aware of the manatees. And I know they get hit by speedboats, and I guess I didn't know quite the problem with them being starved. But one of the principles of the rights of nature is that nature gets to be heard in its own right, not because of some damage to a human interest, but because of the damage to that particular being. So a person could sue on behalf of the manatee. And I was contrasting that with the Endangered Species Act, which, as you say, it's really unusual among environmental laws. It's the only one that really protects nature, protects not just the animals, but the habitat in which they live. But there it's kind of it's a forced obligation. And this idea of that that animal certainly has rights to be represented, we have to take care of that because we're violating its rights if we deprive it of the habitat it needs to live. So I really appreciate the way your icon spoke to me tonight.
I have a question for you, Herman. How is the ecocide law coming along? The one, that they're trying to integrate into the Rome Statute?
Well, it's been a long journey. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name. What do you remember the name of the woman that was leading that for so long?
Holly Higgins.
Yeah, Polly Higgins, and she died at just around 50, and she had cancer, unfortunately, but she did so much to bring this to people's attention. It's very much in discussion. It has to be approved by the signatories to the treaty. The United States is not a signatory.
No,
but it has to be approved by the signatories to the treaty. And it is actually, there is ecocide laws in 19 countries. At least that was the number I last remember. Mm-hmm. So it has been approved at some state levels, but it hasn't yet hasn't been approved as an amendment to the Treaty of Rome.
Okay, that's good to know. I would also like to recommend a wonderful piece by Thomas Berry called "Every Being Has Rights" that he gave with the Schumacher lecture. The 23rd Schumacher lecture. You could look it up. It's terrific.
Yeah.
As is everything he wrote. So. John Fox, I think you got your hand up.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you so much. I hope I can find some words to what feel like I need to say. Very moved by your sensitivity and the beauty of the artwork and your report to us about what's going on. It's very heartening to see the art, particularly very disheartening to hear what's going on, particularly the image of the orangutan trying to touch that what's it called?
Bulldozer.
The bulldozer. It was hard to watch.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I love that quote by Thomas Berry about our assigned roles,
Yeah.
And it's very interesting, those two words, assigned. So I feel like I've been assigned more of the creative, and although in some ways I wish I was more in the confrontive kind of field and knew how to do that in a way that Julia Butterfly Hill did. But so I'm sort of trying to get to this, that your sensitivity, your beauty, your capacity to appreciate beauty in life, and but then what do I do with it? What seems to me this abject heartlessness of destroying the earth and showing no regard for life, even human life, but any life. And it's hard not to feel a sense of either helplessness or rage. And I don't know if anybody else feels that way. Like I say, I feel like I've found my the current that I'm supposed to be in, but that doesn't solve my issue of dealing with abject heartlessness. I'm not asking you to really answer that. I actually am just interested if anybody else ever feels that way.
Well, I can say that I do. Rage is good because it's a motivator. We've been told that we shouldn't be angry and all this stuff. It's just, that's bull. And, I'm sure that the people who are in trees or whatever they're doing, that they're motivated by two things, by love and also outrage. And it's okay, what else was I going to say? But I was going to say something else, but I can't remember what it was. There's the other thing I love. There's a woman named Sandra Steingraber. I'm not sure if everybody knows who she is. She's fantastic. And there's a book and a movie written about her. It's called Living Downstream. She's very, very active in the anti-fracking movement. And what she said, she has a term, she calls it well-informed futility. That, you just put in possession of so much knowledge that, you're paralyzed. So she suggests that, and like you said, you found your ministry or whatever you want to call it, you're leading, if you're a Quaker, and that's it. We all have, this is another phrase she uses, we all have our part to play, our instrument to play in the symphony of saving. That's not to say we don't need more outrage. In fact, Christine Figueres, she has a blog called Outrage and Optimism, which you might want to check out. She convened the Paris.
What is her name again?
Christina Figueres, Figueres. I think that's how you pronounce it, how you spell it.
Okay, well, thank you. I just wanted to bring that up, and this is completely off topic, but I too am a graduate of Bard College.
Oh, you are? We're probably in the same. Were you there before Leon Botstein?
Oh no, he came in just as I got there. About 76.
Oh, okay. And I graduated in 75. So
well, we were on the campus together then. But anyway.
Well, nice to meet you.
Yeah. Thank you.
May I make a comment? May I comment?
Yes, please, by all means.
So that question of how do you deal with this person that that's doing a job? I mean, that's their job to tear down the forest. They get paid for that. That's the way they feed their families. And then you have, us with this great ecological consciousness, and how do you tie our concern together with the reality of the world, and in some cases in a complete criminal disregard, other times just doing your job. And so in the Earth Law movement, we talk about a new ecological social contract. And there was a time when people didn't have anything like the sensitivity they have now. So we have a widening sensitivity to ecological issues, and all that we can do to grow that, all the different methods of change that Angela mentioned or help to bring that about. And then we talk about ecocentric governance. And that's not just law, that's all the institutions like the church, Laudato Si. It's bringing into being a new set of standards for people. So it's all the standard making institutions, from schools to churches to, just all the institutions. And then there's this saying that when, it should be just a matter of love, but when love fails, there's morality. So we teach ourselves these moral rules, but then when morality fails, there's law. And so there is a need to have those laws that are coercive. And of course, it won't solve all the problems in the world, But prior to the time that you can bring into being the laws that are needed, you have to shape this ecological social contract so that all of nature is included in the social contract, not just human beings.
Thank you. That's this conversation has been extremely helpful because the icons were absolutely exquisitely beautiful. But I am just frustrated by my inability to respond effectively and make a difference in the moment, you know, and of course this is such a long haul issue, but John's comments and your comments are really helpful to recognize that just, you know, being part of the group, like part of this group, and then of course extensions into other things we all work in and get in are probably the best ways to respond. But you know, I think John asked if people are in rage and inability to move, and yes, absolutely, it's very, very challenging to come face to face with the power of the beauty, and then feel such a sense of impotence in the face of that. Yeah, it's hard, but we'll get there.
I want to put Marcia Annenberg on the spot because she's aware of, well, oh, look, she just in the chat, she's mentioning Bill McKibben's new group called Third Act. It's for elders, and there's going to be a huge action. What day is that, Marcia? Can you give us some information about that? Oh, 3/21/23. And there are actions going on around the country. So you might want to look into that, Sarah.
There's a huge action on 3/21/23 next week in New York, starting at Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza at the UN at 10:30 in the morning, and then marching over to the headquarters of Chase Manhattan Bank, because Chase is the greatest funder of fossil fuel infrastructure in the world. Since Paris Treaty has been signed, I think they've lent over, I don't know, $1 trillion to various oil and gas companies. In the face of the International Energy Agency saying no new fossil fuels infrastructure if we're to keep under 1.5 of heating, these companies are heedless of this warning, heedless of the extra heat going into the earth and the oceans. And Bill McKibben's group, Third Act, and his group for younger people, 350.org, is doing wonderful things. And I urge everyone to join with Bill and Third Act or 350 to try to stop all this money going out to the oil and gas companies. And Tuesday is a national and possibly international action. Thank you, Angela.
Mm-hmm.
Angela, I am echoing everybody's deep appreciation for the work you've done and the attention that you are paying and the way you're sharing that attention with us. And I guess a domestic story about birds. So I've been sick with COVID for 2 weeks, and as part of that, I've had the opportunity to really pay attention to the birds that have been coming to our bird feeders because we've had so much snow, and just having this sense of this kind of, falling in love kind of feeling with these birds, and feeling kind of silly and kind of vulnerable, but also having this sense that maybe that's part of what is being asked of us, is this capacity to be kind of caught at that level of connection. So, yeah. So just, I feel like that's part of the journey that maybe we're being invited to as we start to kind of just reprogram ourselves to be different as part of the biosphere. And not that we're going to do all that work, but that we make ourselves vulnerable to it, open to it. Yeah, thank you.
Kathleen?
You're muted, Kathleen.
Thank you. I'm so very grateful to Angela for being patient with us in the very challenging process that it took to finally bring her icons to Iona University through the Institute for Earth and Spirit. But I want to say that I'm hearing all of us. I'm hearing John Fox's really gut-wrenching concern and desire to be able to engage somehow and to be saving this beauty. And now I'm going to say something that probably has absolutely no pragmatic benefit at all. But it is that I feel that these icons are truly icons. They are meant to be gazed upon, and they are meant to gaze upon us, as in the powerful Hindu practice of darshan, where the sacred one, live or immortalized in these representations, gaze upon us and empower us in some way, activate us in some way that we can't, I don't think that we can rationally explain. I'm always wrestling with Father Thomas's mandate to reinvent the human at the species level. And I feel, Angela, that your icons are presenting to me the glorious, luminous, divine, incarnate brilliance of each of these species in their species nature. I mean, I can't even imagine how long it took you to indulge in the remarkable practice of gazing upon these creatures and representations of these creatures such that you could transmit their beauty to us in the ways that you have. And I just want to say, I mean, I know that this is not being extremely faithful to the incarnate task, the embodied task, the material task of saving beauty. But I really believe that we save things psychically. We save things by remembering them. We save them by celebrating them and being in love with them. Let's face it, we're all going in the direction of the endangered species on this planet. This is not a forever planet. It's not even a forever universe, maybe. So I want to just thank you for bringing me into a sanctuary of mystical immersion into the presence and to the beauty of these once in a lifetime, once in a cosmos set of beings. And I'm going to dare to say that that's going to be enough. It won't be all, but it will be enough for me. So thank you.
I just want to offer something that in the process of making these icons, the gazing comes in stages. So, you know, I select an image, and then as I create it, I become more and more deeply attuned and involved with that creature. And someday I will, Margaret was talking about my process, but I'd love to do a little slide presentation of the process, because these images evolve, you know, in stages. So by the end, you're staring at this being. In the beginning, you're just laying the foundation and then putting on layer after layer until you have the full manifestation, which is very much like how we're created, you know, or how you create anything. It starts from very foundation, and then it starts to become more and more refined. And so hopefully I can share that process with you sometime, because I think you'd appreciate it.
Angela and all, this is Kevin again. We certainly expect we'll be seeing you again. and as we say, in the old familiar places, and perhaps with those familiar faces. It's a wonderful moment for us to be able to host you. And we thank you again for being with us. And we look forward to the exhibition.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it just next week.
Yeah, that's right. It's around the corner.
Right.
And with the permission of James and Kathleen, I will be closing with a prayer, unless we have a final remark that we need to make sure people hear. Jim or Kathleen, something that we need to say still?
I think we're ready to close, Brother Kevin. I mean, one last brief comment that springs to mind for me, just listening to this really rich dialogue, conversation, quest for truth, or as the Catholic workers would put it, clarification of thought, is Rosemary Radford Ruther's emphasis on the need to build communities of celebration and resistance. So what do we do with our feelings of rage, right? And how do we work with those feelings in a way that could be generative, creative, in a way that could move us in the direction of sustainability and justice? We need circles, we need communities, we need groups of friends committed to the cause, where we can truly dive into and steep in the beauty and splendor of creation and celebrate the immense glory of creation, while also reflecting on the devastating gravity of destruction that needs resistance, that needs a no. But the no comes out of the yes, and the yes inspires the no. So we move together, we move as a circle, we move as a communion of subjects as we resist systems of domination that objectify our world. And Angela, I just think your project is such an incredible aspect of that movement. And again, I'm just so grateful that this will be planted on campus at Iona and that students will engage with this. And I think it will be very, very generative as they figure out what to do with their rage, as well as what to do with their celebration and their yes to the glory and goodness of creation. So thank you again. And Brother Kevin, I hand it off to you.
Well, I just want to say that I'm really looking forward to engaging with the students, because I rarely get to hang out with young people. So it's going to be great.
Well, okay, we can certainly do that for you. We'll get some young people to hang out with you. That would be something great. And thank you, James, and thank you, Kathleen and Angela. Again, thank you for what you bring to us and how we can rejoice in this grace. Also, to remind ourselves that in Pope Francis' efforts at Laudato Si, he made it very clear more than once that we need to remember that no matter how bleak we sometimes can see how things are becoming, the Creator has not abandoned us. The Creator has not abandoned us. I also recommend, I put it in the chat, if you haven't seen it on YouTube, it's called The Letter.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a wonderful report on what really is Laudato Si about and who is it intended for and how does it reach people and touch people. It's about 85 minutes. It's YouTube. It's a free show at this point, but I think it's a wonderful way into Laudato. And if we don't mind, we'll take a moment of prayer and silence here as I finish up our group. In the coming hours of darkness, may there be light in our dreams. In the stillness of sleep, may there be strength for our souls. In those wakeful watches of night, may there be peace in our minds. Light for new vision. Strength to make sacrifice, peace for our world. On the pathways of Earth's journey this night, let there be peace. Amen, and thank you. We'll let you say goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, James and Kevin and everyone. Thank you for this beautiful evening.
Mm-hmm. Thank you all. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah. Good night, Brian.
Bye.
Oh.
Thank you,
Hello,
Angela.
Christine.
Bye.
Hi, sister. I wanted to hop on to say hello.
Good to see you.
Oh,
Yeah.
There's one of our graduates who is, she is saving beauty. She is saving beauty.
Good night, everybody.